You won't believe how a simple summer skirt nearly destroyed my entire marriage, and how I uncovered the chilling truth my husband had been hiding for months. What happened next will leave you speechless. I knew the moment I stepped out of the bedroom that something was off. My husband, Nate, was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like it had personally wronged him. His jaw was tight, and when he looked up at me, the look in his eyes made my stomach twist. I was wearing the skirt my mom sent me. Just a soft, floral number that hit a few inches above the knee. I thought it looked cute. It wasn't even tight, just flowy and light, perfect for the summer heat. My mom and I had gone shopping the weekend before, just the two of us, like old times. She picked it out and said, "This is so you." So, I wore it. I hadn't expected it to spark World War III in my own living room. "The hell are you wearing?" Nate's voice was flat, but sharp enough to slice right through me. I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. "What do you mean?" He stood up, phone still in hand, and gave me this once-over that felt more like a verdict than a glance. "You're seriously walking around in that?" he asked. "You look like a damn whore." I swear, I froze. My heart didn't just skip a beat, it stopped, staggered, and tried to crawl back into my chest. "What did you just say to me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You heard me," he snapped. "That skirt. You really think it's appropriate to dress like that and then go hang out with your little friend again?" I stared at him, speechless. My little friend was Mason, a guy I'd known since college. Mason and I had been part of the same friend group for years. He's always been like a brother to me. But ever since Nate saw a picture of us at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago, smiling, fully clothed, with 2 other people in the background, he's been acting like I'm 1 drink away from leaving him. I told him nothing was going on. I begged him to believe me. But it was like a switch flipped inside him that day, and he never turned it back. "You're being ridiculous," I finally said. "My mom gave me this skirt." "It's just a skirt, Nate." He scoffed, then laughed, like I'd said the most absurd thing. "Oh, of course. Your mom, the woman who spent half her life bar hopping and thinks boundaries are a joke. Great role model." That one stung. My mom isn't perfect, she talks too loud and has a weakness for wine spritzers, but she's always been there for me. Always. I was already on the edge, but then, he lost it. He walked over to the closet and yanked the door open, started pulling out my clothes, throwing them on the floor. Shirts, dresses, skirts, anything remotely feminine or flirty got tossed into a pile. "What are you doing?" I cried, running after him. He didn't answer. Just kept ripping through hangers like a man possessed. I tried to grab one of my dresses back from him, and he shoved it out of my hands and tore the fabric in 2. I actually gasped like I'd been hit. "That dress was from our honeymoon." "You don't get to cry," he said, glaring at me. "Not when you're out here parading yourself for other men." I started crying anyway. I couldn't help it. I felt humiliated. Violated. My own husband was destroying my things and calling me things I wouldn't even let strangers say to me. "I haven't done anything wrong," I said through tears. But he wasn't listening. "You think I don't see the way you look at Mason? The way you laugh at his jokes? You think I'm stupid?" There it was. This wasn't about a skirt. Or Mason. Or even my mom. It was about whatever Nate had let build up inside of him until it boiled over. And now here I was, crying in my torn-apart bedroom, surrounded by my clothes like broken pieces of myself, while the man who swore to love me was busy painting me as something I never was. He didn't apologize. He didn't even stop. Eventually, he just stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I stayed there, on the floor, shaking, trying to figure out when everything had started to fall apart. It wasn't the skirt. It was something much deeper. And I wasn't sure I wanted to find out what it was. But I knew one thing, this wasn't love. And it sure as hell wasn't safety. And the worst part? I had no idea what to do next. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest room, curled up under a throw blanket that barely covered my knees, staring at the ceiling like it might offer answers. Nate hadn't come back into the room. I didn't even hear him moving around. Just silence. Heavy and bitter. The pile of shredded clothes still sat on our bedroom floor like a crime scene. My dresser drawers were hanging open, half empty, the rest of my things either crumpled or missing. I couldn't bring myself to clean it up. It felt like admitting this had really happened. In the morning, he acted like nothing had happened. I heard him in the kitchen, making coffee, humming under his breath. When I walked in, he didn't even look up. Just poured himself a cup and said, "You want one?" "No," I replied, still hoarse from crying. He finally glanced at me. His eyes flicked over my oversized hoodie and leggings, and something in his face shifted. Like I'd passed some kind of test. "Glad you're dressed normally," he muttered. I felt my stomach churn. I should have left right then. Should have packed a bag and gone to my sister's or checked into a hotel. But I was stuck. Not just emotionally, physically, too. My wallet was still in the bedroom, along with my phone charger and car keys. After last night, I didn't want to go back in there. He started scrolling on his phone again, sipping his coffee like we were just another couple dealing with a small misunderstanding. "So," he said, not even looking at me, "you going to keep seeing Mason?" I blinked. "What? Mason," he repeated. "You seeing him again?" "I told you," I said slowly, trying to stay calm, "we're just friends. I haven't even seen him in weeks." Nate shrugged. "Probably for the best. You get weird when you're around him. Like you forget you're married." I could feel my fists clench. "You're the one who forgot we're married. You destroyed my things. You called me I couldn't even finish the word. You humiliated me. And you haven't even said sorry." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't remorse, it was irritation. "Why should I apologize when you brought it on yourself?" That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I turned on my heel and walked back to the bedroom, heart pounding, unsure if I was going to scream, pack a bag, or punch a hole in the wall. But the second I walked in, I stopped short. The clothes were gone. The entire mess, my torn dresses, my skirt, the shoes he'd kicked aside, were missing. In their place was a single cardboard box on the bed, taped shut. I opened it slowly. My clothes were stuffed in carelessly. Wrinkled. Some still smelled like perfume or detergent. But they were all mine. And then I saw it. Right on top. The skirt. Crumpled into a wad. A huge tear down the side like it had been ripped in half. There was a note sitting on top of it. Just one word. Trash. I felt something tighten in my chest. My throat burned. I sat down on the edge of the bed, holding that ruined piece of fabric like it had been part of me. Because it was. It wasn't about the skirt. It was about the fact that something I wore, a gift from my mother, had been used as an excuse to tear me down. He didn't just hate the skirt. He hated the idea of me choosing for myself. I left the box and walked straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and splashed water on my face. When I looked up in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired. Numb. When I came out, Nate was waiting. He leaned in the doorway with his arms crossed. "You need to stop overreacting," he said. "We're fine. You just got a little too comfortable pushing boundaries." "Boundaries?" I asked. "You think that's what this is about?" He nodded. "You wear stuff like that, flirt with Mason, and act like I'm crazy for noticing." "You are crazy," I snapped. "For thinking that any of that means I'm cheating." He stepped closer. "Are you?" The question hit me like a slap. "No. But after the way you've been acting, I wish I had been." His eyes narrowed. "So now you're threatening me?" I backed up. "No. I'm telling you that if this is how you think a marriage works, tearing things up, accusing me without proof, controlling what I wear, then maybe we shouldn't be married." There was a pause. A dangerous kind of silence. And then he laughed. Not loud. Not manic. Just a low, dry chuckle that made my skin crawl. "So now you're playing victim?" I didn't answer. I just walked past him, grabbed the box of my clothes, and dragged it down the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. I still didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay frozen in that house. As I reached the door, he called out, "You're seriously walking out over a stupid skirt?" I turned around and met his eyes, steady for the first time in days. "No," I said. "I'm walking out because I don't feel safe in my own home." Then I closed the door behind me. I didn't go far that day. I drove around the block 3 times before finally parking in front of Mason's building. I didn't even mean to go there, not really. My brain just sort of defaulted. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, by Nate's design, but I knew he'd answer the door. I sat in the car for a full 5 minutes, staring at the steering wheel like it might give me the words to say. When I finally knocked on Mason's door, he opened it in joggers and a hoodie, blinking like he hadn't expected to see me again at all. His face changed the second he saw my eyes. "Whoa," he said, stepping back. "Hey. Are you okay?" I didn't answer. I just stood there holding that box with my torn clothes stuffed inside, feeling like if I said one word, I'd shatter. Mason didn't ask anything else. He just stepped aside and said, "Come in." I dropped the box in his entryway and sank onto the couch. Mason disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and a blanket, because apparently, he's still the kind of guy who notices when your hands are shaking. We sat there in silence for a while. I sipped the water. He waited. Eventually, I whispered, "He called me a whore." Mason didn't flinch. He just clenched his jaw and stared at the floor. "Over that skirt?" he asked. I nodded. "And then tore up half my closet." "Jesus," he muttered. "Did he hit you?" "No," I said quickly, and that was true. But it didn't make it okay. He just lost it. Over something so small. Mason looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. He just leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and said, "You don't have to go back there." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that idea sounded so simple when he said it. Just, don't go back. Like it was a light switch I could flip. I stayed at Mason's place that night. I slept on his couch, fully dressed, the blanket tucked around me like a fragile shield. Mason didn't hover. He just brought me tea in the morning and offered me his Wi-Fi password like it was any other Saturday. For a little while, it felt normal. But normal didn't last. By Sunday afternoon, Nate had found me. I don't know if he tracked my location or called around, but my phone buzzed with a text while I was brushing my teeth in Mason's bathroom. "So this is where you ran off to? With him? Should have known." My stomach dropped. Another text followed right after. "Don't bother coming back. You've made your choice." I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? That I'd run to the only person who hadn't made me feel like I was losing my mind? I stepped out into the hallway, and Mason was already standing there, holding my phone out like it was a live wire. "He's texting," he said, voice tight. "A lot." I took the phone. 5 new messages. All in a row. The last one made my hands go cold. "Did you sleep with him? Be honest." I sank onto the couch again, heart pounding. "He's accusing me again," I said quietly. Mason sat beside me, not too close. "Let him accuse. You don't owe him anything right now." I looked at him. "But he's my husband." Mason didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he said, "Yeah. But you're still you. You don't stop being a person just because you're married." It hit me harder than it should have. Later that night, after Mason left to pick up groceries, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. I found one from last fall, me and Nate at a pumpkin patch. He had his arms wrapped around me, smiling into the camera like he actually liked being there. I remembered how he'd surprised me with hot cider afterward and carried my boots when they got muddy. That day had felt warm. Safe. I stared at the photo, trying to remember what changed. Was it that coffee shop picture with Mason? The skirt? Was he always like this and I just hadn't noticed? Or had something cracked inside of him that I couldn't fix? I didn't hear from Nate the next day. But I did get a text from his sister, Liv. "Call me, please." I hadn't spoken to her much lately. Nate always said she was too nosy, but I'd always liked her. We'd been close during the first couple years of our marriage, until Nate started pulling away from both of us. I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Oh, thank God," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm managing," I said. "How did you know?" "He's been spiraling," she said. "He called my mom this morning ranting about you running off with some guy and throwing everything away." My mom's in tears. "I told them to stop taking his calls until he cools off. I figured he'd pushed you too far." I didn't say anything. "I just want you to know," Liv continued, "whatever he's saying to people, I don't believe it. You don't deserve this. And I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner." I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes again, but I blinked them away. "Thank you," I whispered. We talked a while longer. She offered me a place to stay. I told her I was okay at Mason's for now, but the offer meant more than she knew. By the end of the night, I still hadn't decided what to do. I didn't want to rush into anything. I didn't want to pack a suitcase and call it a decision. But I also knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. Not when every step in that house felt like walking on glass. And as I lay on Mason's couch again, the soft sound of the city outside his window, I realized something. I wasn't mourning my marriage. I was mourning the version of me that believed it was still safe. I didn't expect the gossip. Not from strangers, and definitely not from people I considered friends. But by Tuesday, it had started, slow, indirect, and then full-on whispering. It began when I stopped by my old job to drop off a few files I'd been working on remotely. A couple of the women I used to eat lunch with gave me that smile. You know the one. Tight, sympathetic, too polite to be real. One of them leaned in when the others stepped away. "Hey, just wanted to say I'm really sorry about everything I heard about Well, what's going on? I froze. What exactly did you hear? She hesitated, then looked down at her coffee like it might answer for her. That you left Nate for someone else. That you were seeing your friend behind his back. I just stared at her. Seriously? She winced. I didn't believe it. I told them that's not like you, but. No, I cut her off. There is no but. That's not what happened. I left without saying anything else. I sat in my car, hands shaking, heart pounding like I'd just been caught doing something wrong, except I hadn't done anything. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I wore a skirt. I asked for space. And now I was the villain in a story I didn't write. Later that night, I found out that Nate had been talking. Not to me, of course. But to everyone else. He told his mom that I had been emotionally distant 4 months. That I'd become obsessed with my male friend. That he'd tried to work on things, but I refused to stop flirting with other men. It was like watching someone build a whole fantasy out of dust and calling it the truth. I didn't even know where to begin untangling it. Mason found me crying in the kitchen that night. I hadn't heard him come home, he just walked in, saw me standing there clutching my phone, and said, "What happened?" "He's poisoning people against me," I said. "He's spinning the whole thing." Mason leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his jaw tight. "Of course he is. He has to. Because if he admits what actually happened, he has to live with the fact that he destroyed something good." The silence hung between us for a second too long. I looked up. "Do you think he actually believes what he's saying?" Mason shook his head slowly. "No. But I think he wants to." The next day, I went back to the house. I waited until I knew he'd be at work, still had access to our shared calendar, and let myself in with the spare key I'd kept in my wallet. It felt like trespassing even though it was still half mine. The place looked the same, but it felt different. Colder. Emptier. Like the soul had been sucked out of it. Maybe it had. I didn't go there to pack up everything, just a few things I needed. My birth certificate. My charger. Some clothes that weren't ripped to shreds. I avoided the bedroom. But when I passed the hallway mirror, I stopped. For the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired. But she also looked stronger. Like something inside her had been carved out and refilled with steel. That night, I sat down and wrote a message. To Nate. I didn't send it. But I needed to say it somewhere. You hurt me in ways I didn't think you ever would. You didn't just destroy my clothes. You destroyed the way I saw you. You made me doubt myself. Made me afraid in my own home. And now you're lying about me to protect your own pride. I don't hate you. But I can't love someone who confuses control for care. I hope someday you realize what you did. Not so I can say I told you so, but because the next woman you love deserves better than this version of you. I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the draft. He didn't deserve that kind of honesty. He deserved silence. The only person I sent a message to was Liv. Just a simple text. You were right. Thank you for believing me. She responded a minute later. Always. Whatever you need, I'm here. I didn't cry this time. I felt calm. Not fixed. Not whole. But, calm. That weekend, Mason sat next to me on the balcony of his apartment, the city glowing in the distance. He handed me a bowl of cereal like we were two kids at a sleepover, and said, "So. What now?" I stared out over the rooftops and thought about it. What now? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to find out. I thought once I got away from Nate, once I was physically out of the house, things would start to settle. That the worst was over. But I was wrong. Because sometimes the real storm comes after the damage, when the people around you start choosing sides, and not everyone chooses yours. It started with my mom. She called me the following Monday afternoon, voice tight, clipped, no warm hello, no how are you. I just got off the phone with Nate. I braced myself. Okay. He said you've been staying with a man. There it was. I took a deep breath. I've been staying with Mason. He's a friend. Nothing's going on. She went silent for a beat. Then, that's not what it looks like. I mean, what were you thinking, sweetie? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom. You were the one who bought me that skirt. Do you remember? The one he flipped out over? The one he tore my closet apart over? Well, that wasn't okay, she said quickly, almost too quickly, like she needed to say it before she changed her mind. But maybe you should have been more careful. You know how sensitive he is. I froze. Sensitive? He's always been a little high-strung, she said. But you knew that when you married him. And now you're just running off to another man's house instead of working things out? I didn't run off, I snapped. I left because I didn't feel safe. There was another pause. Marriage is hard, honey. You don't just walk out the first time things get hard. He called me names. He accused me of cheating. He destroyed my things. I'm just saying, she sighed, there are two sides to every story. I ended the call. She texted me later to say she loved me, but the damage was already done. That sentence, there are two sides, echoed in my head like a slap I couldn't dodge. I didn't respond. The next day, I got a message from one of our mutual friends. Or, someone I thought was a friend. Hey. Just wondering if everything's okay. Nate said you've been struggling mentally and might have misunderstood what happened. Misunderstood? I stared at the screen for a long time, then just blocked the number. I was done explaining myself to people who had already made up their minds. But it still got to me. It chipped away at my confidence, made me question if maybe I was overreacting. If maybe I'd imagined how bad it was. If maybe, just maybe, Nate was right. That night, I sat on Mason's couch, my knees tucked to my chest, and I told him everything, every little piece of it. From the skirt, to the name-calling, to the look in Nate's eyes when he held up my torn clothes like trophies. When I was done, Mason didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he said, "That's not just controlling. That's terrifying." I looked at him, eyes burning. But he never hit me. "You don't have to be bruised to be scared," he said. "The way he treated you, that changes how you see yourself. That's enough." I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. Not to coddle me. Not to excuse it. Just to acknowledge it. It gave me strength. The next morning, I started looking for a place of my own. Not my parents' house. Not a friend's couch. Mine. A studio above a bakery downtown had a "for rent" sign in the window, and I walked in on a whim. The woman who showed it to me was in her 50s, wore a chunky knit sweater and smelled like lavender. She talked more about the neighborhood than the unit itself. It had creaky floors and ancient tile in the bathroom, but when I stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Stillness. Peace. It wasn't much. But it could be a start. I signed the lease the next day. That night, when I told Mason, he smiled and hugged me without a single word. Just wrapped his arms around me like he knew exactly what it took for me to make that decision. "You're going to be okay," he said softly. And for the first time, I believed it. 2 days before I was supposed to move into the studio above the bakery, something strange happened. I got a call from Nate's cousin, Jordan. We weren't close, more of a "see you at family cookouts" kind of connection, but he'd always been decent to me. Quiet, observant. The kind of guy who didn't talk unless he had something worth saying. So when he texted, "Can we talk privately? It's about Nate," I didn't know what to expect. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Jordan showed up in a wrinkled button-down and looked nervous, like he'd been rehearsing this moment all morning. He didn't waste time. "I wasn't going to say anything," he started, "but I saw what he did to your stuff. And I saw what he posted after you left." I blinked. "Posted?" Jordan pulled out his phone, tapped through a few screens, and turned it toward me. It was a private story. Instagram. One I hadn't been included in. Nate, grinning in a video, standing next to a trash bag full of clothes. "Out with the trash," he said, smirking. "Fresh start, right?" My heart dropped. He filmed himself tossing the bag into a dumpster. My clothes. My memories. And he was bragging about it like it was some kind of joke. Jordan swiped to the next clip. A meme. "When she cries, but you already warned her, play stupid games." I didn't finish it. I didn't have to. It wasn't just that he was lying about what happened. He was mocking me. Weaponizing my pain so his friends could high-five him over it in private. "He's telling everyone you cheated," Jordan said quietly. "That you and Mason had been hooking up for months." My jaw clenched. "And people believe it?" Jordan looked down at his coffee. "A few of them. But not everyone. Liv's been defending you." I didn't believe it either. And now, I know I was right. For a long time, I couldn't speak. The man I married had taken the worst moment of my life and turned it into a punchline. And somehow, that hurt even more than the skirt. More than the closet. More than the accusations. Because it meant he never loved me the way I thought he did. Not really. He loved control. He loved being right. And when he lost it, he didn't grieve, he retaliated. I left the coffee shop and walked around for a while, my hands numb inside my pockets. The wind stung, but I barely felt it. I didn't tell Mason what Jordan showed me. Not right away. I needed to sit with it first. Needed to figure out what to do next. But by the time I got back to the apartment, I'd made a decision. I grabbed my laptop, opened our shared cloud account, one we'd used to store vacation photos and receipts and random documents, and typed in the old password. It worked. I clicked through folders aimlessly at first. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Closure? Evidence? Something that would make this mess make sense? And then I saw it. A folder I didn't recognize. Titled with just a date. I opened it. Inside were screenshots. Messages. From me and Mason. From months ago. Completely out of context, little jokes, emojis, laughing about old memories. Harmless on their own, but strung together like a trail Nate had curated. A story he'd wanted to believe. The dates matched up with when the paranoia started. The shift. The cold shoulder. The sudden obsession with what I wore and where I went. He'd been spying. Reading my messages. Taking notes. He never trusted me. I should have felt violated. And I did, on some level. But mostly, I just felt empty. Because now I knew. This wasn't about a skirt. This was about a man who needed someone to blame for his own insecurities. And when he couldn't control me, he had to destroy me. The next morning, I boxed up everything I had at Mason's. Just a few things, really. Toothbrush. Books. A couple sweaters. Mason helped load the car. "You okay?" he asked as he shut the trunk. "Not really," I said. "But I'm ready." He nodded. "That's enough for now." As we stood on the curb, I finally told him about the videos. The Instagram posts. The spying. Mason's face changed, tightened in a way I'd never seen before. But he didn't explode. He didn't rant. He just said, "I knew he was angry. I didn't know he was cruel." I moved into the studio later that day. It was small. The ceiling fan made a weird clicking noise, and the shower pressure was laughable. But it was mine. I stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by boxes, and took the deepest breath I'd taken in weeks. Nate could post whatever he wanted. He could twist the story, rewrite it, scream it into every void that would echo him back. But the truth? The truth was standing on her own 2 feet again. It happened on a Thursday. I had just gotten back from the hardware store, nothing major, just a new shower curtain and some shelves that would probably sit in the box for 2 weeks before I got around to mounting them. I was still adjusting to the weird rhythm of being alone again. Still startled by how quiet it was, how no one was asking what's for dinner or complaining about how I folded the towels. I had just kicked off my shoes and was halfway through heating up leftover soup when someone knocked on my door. A slow, deliberate knock, 3 times. I knew it was him before I even looked through the peephole. "Nate." I froze. There was a time when just the sound of his voice could calm me down after a bad day. But right then, just seeing the blurry shape of him on the other side of the door made my stomach twist. I didn't open it at first. He knocked again, softer this time. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. Just stood there, barefoot, heart pounding. Then something clicked inside me. Not fear. Not panic. Clarity. I opened the door halfway, left the chain on. "What do you want?" He looked different. Less smug than usual. Tired. His hair was messier than normal, like he'd been running his hands through it all day. "I just want 5 minutes," he said. "Please." I almost said no. But I didn't. I unlatched the chain, opened the door, and stepped aside. He walked in slowly, taking in the space like it physically offended him. I could tell he wanted to say something about how small it was or how the paint was peeling near the window. But he didn't. He sat down on the edge of the futon, the only real piece of furniture I'd unpacked so far. I didn't offer him anything. "Why are you here?" I asked. He hesitated. "I guess." I wanted to explain. That word. Explain. Like there was some secret reason that would suddenly make everything okay. I stayed standing. "You want to explain why you trashed my things? Or why you told people I cheated on you? Or why you posted a video of my clothes in a dumpster?" His face flushed. "That was a mistake. I was angry." "You were calculated," I corrected. "Anger fades. But you planned that. You filmed it. You shared it." He looked down at his hands. I felt humiliated. "You left without warning. You stayed with that guy." Everyone started talking. I needed to take back some control. And there it was. Control. Not remorse. Not regret. Just a confession that he felt small, so he needed to make me smaller. "You read my messages," I said. "You built a story in your head and then punished me for it." He didn't deny it. "I thought you were slipping away. You were dressing different. laughing at someone else's jokes. And I didn't know how to handle that. You handle that by talking to me. Not by tearing me down. He nodded slowly. I know that now. We sat in silence for a minute. I could feel something shifting in the air. A weight that used to sit between us, expectation, obligation, starting to dissolve. Finally, he looked up. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. And for a second, I wasn't sure how to answer. I don't hate you, I said carefully. But I don't trust you. And I definitely don't love you. Not anymore. His face fell, but he didn't argue. He just nodded. I'm sorry, he said, and for once, he sounded like he meant it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wanted to say it. I walked to the door and opened it. He stood up, walked past me, then paused in the doorway. I really did love you, he said. I just didn't know how to keep you. I looked him in the eye, steady and clear. You don't keep someone, Nate. You choose them. Every day. And you stopped choosing me a long time ago. He nodded once, stepped into the hallway, and left without another word. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because this time, I felt something else. Relief. That night, I ate my soup cold and sat on the floor of my studio, surrounded by open boxes and silence. And it felt like peace. It's been almost 3 months since Nate walked out of my apartment and out of my life for good. 3 months of unpacking, boxes, memories, pieces of myself I hadn't touched in years. At first, I expected everything to feel lighter right away, like the weight would lift as soon as the door closed behind him. But that's not how it worked. There were days I missed him. Not the version who called me names or tore apart my closet, but the version I thought I had. The version who used to kiss my forehead when I was tired, who made bad jokes while folding laundry, who talked about baby names like we were planning forever. Grief doesn't just come for the bad parts. It comes for the good ones too, the fake ones, the almosts. But with each day, the noise faded. I started sleeping through the night again. I hung a cheap string of lights around my kitchen window. I painted the chipped bathroom cabinet a deep navy blue. The studio still smelled like new paint and takeout boxes, but it was mine. Every inch of it. Mason stopped by less often. That was something we talked about early on, how I needed space to be alone, to process this on my own terms. He understood. Of course he did. He always had. But every now and then, he'd swing by with coffee or a new book he thought I'd like. Never asking for anything. Just showing up. One Sunday morning, I met him for breakfast at this little place that served pancakes bigger than the plates they came on. We sat in a booth near the window, the sunlight creeping in through dusty blinds, and for the first time I felt, still. No pressure. No pretending. No one judging the way I held my fork or how much butter I used. We didn't talk about Nate. We talked about future trips. About maybe hiking again once spring came. About how my studio didn't have any curtains and my neighbors probably knew way too much about my bedtime habits. He laughed and said, yeah, maybe invest in those before you start dating again. And I laughed too. Not because I was ready, but because I knew I'd get there. Eventually. After breakfast, we hugged goodbye in the parking lot, and for the first time, it didn't feel like I was clinging to something. It just felt good. The kind of good that doesn't beg. The kind that doesn't break. Later that week, I found the skirt. I hadn't realized it was still in the box from Nate's house. It was shoved in between some books and an old sweater. Torn, wrinkled, forgotten. I sat with it in my lap for a while, tracing the rip down the side with my fingers. And then I threw it away. Not because it reminded me of pain, but because it no longer defined me. It was just fabric. Just thread. But I was more than what he tried to make me feel. I was not too much. Not asking for it. Not lucky to be chosen. I was someone who walked away when she wasn't being seen. And for once, the silence that followed wasn't cold. It was freedom.